Okay, let's take a peek at textures. And textures are a little bit different than materials because textures actually get applied on top of the material. And you can look at a default cube here in Blender and see in the outliner you have your cube and your cube object and your material, which is associated with that cube, and then a texture associated with the material. And the way to kind of look at this over here in properties is that for the given selected item you have a material, and again you can give that material a color, etc., set your other basic properties for it. And then if you go over one more to textures, that's where you can apply a texture to the material. So if you didn't have this material here, you also wouldn't have a texture. You need to have a material onto which to assign a texture. So let's go ahead now for this cube. It's still selected. Let's just add a new material to make sure we have one. Okay, we'll just call it material, that's fine. And again, we can set up the basic color for it if we want. We don't have to. And now we're able to create a new texture to assign to that material. It's going to default to giving you a procedural type of texture, one that's basically using some kind of algorithm to make a texture on there. But what we want to do is look at adding an image. So we're going to click on image. So again, the way I did that was to assign a texture, making sure I had a material first, and then as the type to choose image or movie. So that again is under type here, image or movie. Now once you've done that, you'll notice that you get a option for the image to either create a new image or open an image. What we're going to do is we're going to make a quick image in Photoshop, and then we're going to open that image here and apply it as a texture. So let's jump over to Photoshop real fast to make an image and talk about how to do that. File, new. And this is something kind of important to look at when you get this new dialog box in Photoshop, is what settings you're going to use here. You of course can call it anything you want, but you want to make sure that you're working in pixels and that your pixel dimensions are basically base 2. So 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512. Those kinds of numbers are going to work the best because they're going to be processed the fastest by the computer, which thinks in base 2. So I'm going to pick 256 by 256. The resolution is 72 because this is going to be output on a screen, just like a web page. And RGB color is a good color space to use. So again, you can use for your width and your height any numbers that you want in here, but it's going to process and render a lot faster if they are multiples of the power of 2. So it's recommended to do, say, 128 by 128 or 256 by 256, and what you can do is pick one of those numbers, try it, apply it, and if it's not quite detailed enough for you, go to the next level, jump up to 512 by 512 or 1028 by 1028. It takes a little bit of experimentation, so play around with it to find a good resolution for you. Once you have your basic canvas space here, you're going to want to generate your texture in this area. You could do that a million ways. You can download things off the net, but for us, let's just say that we're going to select all and fill with one color. Say, well actually let's flip our foreground background here and fill with kind of a beige color. And maybe we'll just grab a brush, flip foreground again, and do a quick little drawing, maybe of like a face or something on here. Okay, you can make this obviously more detailed when you're doing something for real. And save it. I think the best thing to do is to save your image first in a folder called textures is always a good idea. And to save the raw PSD file where you might have lots of layers originally, save that first as a Photoshop file, .psd. And then save a version to use in Blender. So we'll do save as, and let's make that, for example, a PNG, which is a file format that works quite well. And that, you'll notice, has a new suffix now, so we know that's the one we're going to bring into Blender, PNG. Okay. So now we have a basic image or a texture really, to map onto this cube that we've got here. So let's flip back over to Blender. And for our texture, we're going to now open that image that we just saved. So let's jump in here and find it. See if we can figure out where I saved it. Under textures, I like to save all my images under a folder called textures so I can remember where they are. and there's the one that ends in .png. So let's open that image. Okay, now we've applied that texture basically to this sphere. Let's go ahead and look at how we've mapped it on there. We are going to use a projection which is flat in this case because we're just going to map it on. We could do cube too, actually that would work quite well. Obviously we wouldn't want to use a tube or a sphere because we're not placing an image on anything that's roughly that shape. You want to pick the best approximation to the shape that you're working with. Let's try cube. And to see how that worked out, we'll just jump over to the image render tab here and render the image. And voila, you can see that that Photoshop file saved as a PNG again, and then imported into Blender through the texture options here as an image mapped directly onto our cube. In the next tutorial, we're going to go ahead and look at UV textures specifically, which give you greater control over how you're going to map these things onto your object. But this is a great first example into how to make the basic image in Photoshop and then how to apply it as a texture onto an object.